What's going on, guys? Kevin Cage here with another crypto update. I hope you enjoyed the last video. Now let's dive into the good stuff. So we're going to discuss XRP's role in providing global liquidity. We're going to talk about M2's impact on the crypto asset class and risk on assets, and where we're at today and what we could see in the future, or at least what most people expect, including myself. So high level talking about XRP. So since 2018, 2019, we were talking about XRP's role as a neutral bridge asset between currencies, serving as global liquidity. And those thoughts still exist today, if not even more, with XRP's recent price rise since November. And there are a bunch of interesting thoughts out there, there are a lot of conspiracies, but I try to consider them because we really don't know. But I think one of the main thoughts, really based off of Bearable Guy and the Ripple Riddler and all that stuff, is if there is to be some type of global economic crisis, such as bank failures, recessions, we have a situation where central banks have to flood the markets with liquidity in order to prevent a collapse. And we know the rabbit hole for XRP goes unbelievably deep. We've covered this, and a lot of people have covered this for 5 years, 8 years, and there are just so many considerations. And I'm also just thinking about the impact of the crypto asset class with where we're at today and M2 rising. Now, there are crazy connections to global organizations, banks, financial institutions, even governments, and we've gone over that before, but there's also other coincidences, such as the IMF's XRP acronym for their exchange rate price. You wonder, did Ripple the company name XRP on purpose to kind of fit that narrative, or was it coincidence? And why is XRP named XRP? Well, usually the X in front of that stands for foreign exchange, or essentially it means it's neutral and it's an independent digital asset. So you'll see the same thing for silver and gold because their ticker or abbreviation is XAU for gold and then XAG for silver. And you'll see other crypto assets use X in front of it, like XLM for Stellar and then XTC. So basically the X in front of the ticker denotes that it doesn't belong to a specific country, it's neutral. So maybe XRP, X stands for neutral, and then RP stands for Ripple or the Ripple protocol. And we know that Ripple and other executives have participated in the IMF panels. They've participated at the Swiss National Bank with Christine Lagarde back in the day and some of the biggest names in finance and banking. We know their connections to the WEF and the BIS. Such as the BIS Innovation Hub, and the BIS is the central bank of all central banks essentially, and they stand for Bank for International Settlements. So they've referenced a bunch of DLT and interoperability solutions that are very similar to RippleNet. We know Ripple the company is also part of the ISO 222 standards body, which essentially governs future messaging for global payments. And there are so many connections which basically show Ripple and the XRP ledger behind the scenes to help build a neutral liquidity layer. And there are so many thoughts related to the CBDCs and the XRP ledger being a liquidity bridge or Ripple's central bank digital currency platform. We could talk about some of the features of the DEX, or even just go back to on-demand liquidity, ODL, and its purpose today in providing liquidity. There's also the SDR theory, basically XRP will back the next Bretton Woods system or even the SDR 2.0. Basically the thought that XRP becomes the digital neutral asset that replaces or is added to an SDR. Which is the IMF's SDR, that stands for Special Drawing Rights, and it's a basket of fiat currencies, so the euro, the US dollar, the Japanese yen, the pound, etc. And this is used as a global reserve asset for settlement between central banks. There's discussions about a synthetic digital SDR as a bridge between digital CBDCs and tokenized fiat. There's so many things. Ripple custody is a big deal, tokenizing assets, securities, stablecoins, and even just other recent news like the US Crypto Strategic Reserve. And there were so many proof of concepts back in the day with Ripple by the Bank of England right there, so using Ripple Connect, the OG term they used to use, and the Interledger Protocol. The movement of two different currencies across two different real-time gross settlement systems. And speaking of Bank of England, remember they're quoted to say this last year as I scroll down. According to the Bank of England, the value of cross-border payments is forecasted to increase to over $250 trillion in the next 3 years, so by 2027. So if this is all one big conspiracy and I'm wrong, shame on me, but there are too many connections, and I strongly believe that even if there are some conspiracies, it's not all conspiracy. In either way, I hold a variety of digital assets, and I just want long-term exposure in this space. I've seen so many 50 to 90% crashes, I've seen many boom and bust cycles. But really with where we're at today, we're seeing Raoul Pal and then a bunch of really global economists discussing the same thing of M2 going up in order to keep the system running. So this is global liquidity. And over the big picture, yes, this blue line, global liquidity, I believe this also climbs. And the more I look at global liquidity, I'm actually starting to change my mind and realizing it's just these boom and bust cycles of global liquidity when the governments are actually injecting liquidity and then withdrawing liquidity. Such as back in like March 2020 when we really took off here. Technically, we started right there. So this is the Fed's balance sheet, but just turning the lights on. So this was March 2020. As you can see, right around this period where my cursor is, you can see this is basically very close to the bottom of Bitcoin. So let me go right to that wick. That was March 9th of 2020. And I'll do the same thing where it just started exploding around like March 2nd, March 9th, really around the same period. And the Fed added nearly $5 trillion, even more if you start down there, to the balance sheet. And we can see crypto performing. So the last cycle was very interesting because we saw a lot of fiscal stimulus. We saw a bunch of quantitative easing or monetary printing. So the Fed balance sheet is like M0, and then M2 would be seen as global liquidity, which you can learn more on like Bitcoin Magazine and other websites just to learn how global M2 is calculated. And I guess how I see this, for the case of the biggest bull run we've ever seen, we would need to see the Fed balance sheet expand and go up massively like last cycle, and then also M2 exploding up, and that would lead to one of the biggest bull runs. In the exact opposite, if the Fed balance sheet contracted and M2 contracted for a bear. And same thing if the Fed balance sheet was kind of flattened out as M2 went up, or if the Fed balance sheet went up and then M2 was flattened, it would kind of be maybe mild market growth for crypto. The point being is if we see another liquidity cycle, we're going to see M2 keep climbing, and then ideally the Fed balance sheet also finding a bottom and beginning the climb. Alright, next up, we've shared by iTrustCapital, we have Flare, the ticker is FLR, is now available on iTrust. You can check them out using the link in the video description. So they have a boatload of assets now. We can see how many pages they have. The last time I counted it, I believe I counted at least 60 different altcoins. So I've had a Roth IRA here for tax-free growth since January of 2020. And actually, iTrustCapital says right here, over 70 plus cryptocurrencies and precious metals. I also saw this shared by Genfinity. So we have plug and play RWA Accelerator brings leading innovators to XTC Network. So RWA is a real world asset tokenization accelerator. So this is pretty cool. We'll skim through this super quick. This is called Plug and Play RWA Accelerator. If you want to learn more, it was created in collaboration with the XDC Foundation. We have headquartered and operating right in Silicon Valley. And this looks to be a 3-month initiative or program to showcase the power of XDC Network. And this accelerator has selected 11 standout projects from over 100 global applicants. So we have a few groups below. So we have software as a service for RWAs and I believe security token offerings. We have down here Clearpool, which is decentralizing institutional lending. We have different digital asset services like issuance and investor onboarding to management and compliance. We have Credify, I've heard of them before, which is a lending platform. We can see a while back they integrated the XRPL. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. Feel free to check the rest of this article out at genfinity.io. I also saw this the other day, so we have LMAX digital clients can now access the Ripple US dollar stablecoin. And going to this group's website, we can see they shared that they have listed the Ripple US dollar and they are regulated by the Gibraltar Financial Services Commission. We also have XRP Ledger Apex taking place this June in Singapore. We'll cover a couple more things and we'll call it a day. I also think that a lot of projects are going to be a lot more consistent and share way more news when the market is actually trending up. In my experience, they hold some of their biggest announcements or bigger developments until the market is in a more favorable position, so it creates more excitement because it's in their best interest to create excitement, create hype, so people buy their token. So they usually hold back some of the bigger announcements or anything they have going on now until later. So last month we had this announcement with this group in Portugal. I don't speak Portuguese, but I'll just say Unicambio. They are first in Portugal, will provide a faster, cheaper, and more transparent payment corridor with Brazil, so Portugal and Brazil. And a big focus on momentum in Europe with the MiCA compliance or the MiCA regulation for crypto. So right now we have the company Ripple and currency exchange provider Unicambio are bringing crypto-enabled cross-border payments to Portugal to modernize this payment corridor. So good to see we have another Ripple payments user, the typical stuff. And then tying additional connections with Ripple to Brazil, like the Brazilian providers, we have TravelX Bank and Mercado Bitcoin, which are both active members of the Ripple network and will serve as partners to Unicambio for payments between the two countries, so Brazil and Portugal. Highlighting Ripple Custody's partnership with DZ Bank and the BBVA in Switzerland, so in Europe. And really just a bunch going on, including the stablecoin. That was a few months back though with this group. So yeah, that's pretty much it for today's video, guys. We can see the total RWAs on chain today is over 19 billion, so we're definitely seeing a climb up 18% from 30 days ago, so good to see. And other than that, we can track a bunch of chains. You can keep tabs on XRP. I still believe it's right around 50 million. So let's see how this number grows, because we know there's a lot more on the way. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to smash the like button and let me know your thoughts down below. You can find all links to my crypto resources, including tools for charting, trading bots, wallets, portfolio trackers, and exclusive discounts right in my link tree in the video description. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.